Okay, I'd like to call Port of Newport regular monthly commission meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, July 28th. The time is 6:02 p.m. Are there any changes to the agenda? No changes heard. We do have one public comment that I am aware of. Is that correct, Karen? You're on mute.
That comment should probably be read during that particular
Okay.
item.
Okay, so no other public comments then?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any questions on the minutes from our June 23rd meeting? Karen, were you saying something? You're on mute.
Can you hold just a moment while I mute the YouTube?
Okay.
Can you hold for a moment while I mute the YouTube?
Yes.
I'm not on mute.
Hold just a moment while I mute the YouTube.
Okay.
Hold for a moment while I mute the YouTube.
Yes. We will get better with this at this with time.
Thank you.
Are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, no question on the minutes. Any questions on the financial reports? Item B, page 9. Okay, no questions heard. We'll go right to forklift, which is a point of discussion. I'd like to ask the commissioners if they have any comments or questions on forklift commercial marina value of $41,626 for purchase. No questions heard. Looking for a motion for that item.
Actually, Jim, that is on the consent calendar.
Yes.
So unless you want to remove that out of consent calendar, it probably should just be approved under consent calendar.
The whole consent calendar. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on the consent calendar? There's another towable dumpsters on there and the Pacific Waterways Association.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
And I'll second that. That's Gil.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Old business, items removed from the consent calendar. Nothing removed. Accounts paid, any questions on that? Procurement authority.
I think you need to approve the accounts paid.
Yeah. Jim, I would move, I move that we approve accounts paid.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, on to page 63, which will need approval. I know we've talked about this a bit in the past.
Oh, the procurement authority.
Yep.
Yeah, so I talked a bit with our directors in the office, and what ended up happening quite often is sometimes we have any item that is over 6,500, we pretty much have to hold off until commission meeting. And as you may know, in today's business world, 6,500 doesn't buy you much. And the way, and I put all the information in the staff report, but the way it reads today is that as long as it is on the budget, you know, my authority today is 6,500, and I just would like to request as I did a research and I notify you guys, some of the similar size ports there are at 10,000, 25,000, and 125,000. You know, even though, you know, the other coastal ports like Astoria and Coos Bay are way higher than us, at this time, I wouldn't even request to be that high. I mean, it would be easier if it was over 15,000, but I would at least ask to have it at 10,000. That would minimize the amount of times we have to wait to come to commission to get something approved. Hopefully, now that I've been here with you guys for a year, I have shown that I don't go spending money for no good reason, you know, and again, and Mark Brown is watching me anyway, so he will get me on track if I go a little crazy. So, but that would be the request, that we could at least increase that to 10,000, so to make operations a little bit easier.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, this is Gil. So I may not have been here when you had past discussions about this or had set the $6,500 level, but why even just 10? Why not increase it to, let's say, 20,000? Given inflation, given the nature of things. And I'd like to hear from the other commissioners about that, what the thinking is about what the right amount is.
So yeah, Jim, this is Walter. I can give a little background if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
So basically it was 5 when I started. I know conditions have changed as far as economic wise and inflation wise. One of the previous managers had wanted 10 and the bargain was down, I think it was 75, not 65, but it was just a matter of having no surprises come to the commission as far as large sums of money. So it wasn't a trust issue, it was just a lack of not wanting to be surprised. And as far as anything over 10, I'd be very uncomfortable with that. So that's just my input.
Any other thoughts?
I support raising it. I support 10. I could be convinced to go higher as well. Jeff, sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead.
I support raising it as well. I think Paula's been here a year, and I believe she's earned some trust. To me, it's more of a function of our trust with Paula than it is just what it should be for the commission. I think, so I'm okay with incremental change. I know there has been, I don't want to dredge up the past too much, but I'll just say that I believe that level is a function of the general manager and the commission's feeling of feeling on what they feel comfortable with. So, and I'm comfortable with raising it. I don't know about a certain amount. I'm willing to listen.
So just one last comment. To me, it's like an efficiency trade-off, right? So to what degree do we delay decision-making and lose efficiency or lose procurement that should be done more quickly to address issues as compared to bringing it to the commission? Is there a way to bring it to the commission? I don't even care if it's post. You could note it that you had made the purchase, so we're not surprised by hearing anything. And again, I have trust in the staff and in Paula to make the right decision within a reasonable increase. So, I mean, we can raise it to 10. My thinking is you're going to come back in another year or two, want to raise it 15 or 20. So I'd be okay with 20, for example, but I realize other commissioners have a different point of view.
What I can say is that independently, if it's at my authority or not, we have been posting in our reports any types of expenditure that is a little bit on the higher side. So we typically have, brought to you in our reports that we've done this, we've done that. And of course, we'll continue doing that. So if whatever amounts we agree to do today, if I authorize and enter into something like that, I certainly will make sure that you know that I have, enter into an agreement for a certain amount. I mean, if it's small amounts, obviously, it depends. Sometimes small amounts, but the project is important enough that you may want to know. We're still going to let you know. But we'll certainly keep you posted. And in general, I think we have a good idea what's of your interest, and again, those would all be items that is already budgeted for. So it's stuff that we have discussed in the past. It's not something that we'll pick it out of the blue and decide to start something new. So that's all I have to say.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, Jim. Yeah, Jim.
Go
I
ahead,
just got,
Walter.
yeah. I would be uncomfortable increasing it anything over 10 because that's what was stated in our public packet that went out.
Okay.
Just for transparency, if we went over that, I would not feel comfortable because that is not the amount that was stated.
Okay, well, I think it's easy enough to revisit this as needed over the next year, but maybe I'll take a motion now to approve it as is, and if for some reason things change and we need to revisit it, we can. You're on mute.
I can make a motion.
Go for it, Jeff.
I recommend, I move that we increase the general manager procurement authority under item 6 of purchasing approvals to $10,000. All other requirements shall remain the same.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it. This is
Second.
Gil.
Sorry.
Okay, we have several seconds. I think, yeah,
Gil,
Kelly was
give it
muted.
to Gil.
Gil's the first one I heard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to the administrative building. Paul, would you like to introduce that?
Actually, I'll let Mark Brown introduce that. That was his project.
No, the administrative building, he said. Paula.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped the IT provider. Sorry.
Okay.
New
the
business
managed
item
service.
A. Mark,
Sorry.
didn't mean to skip you. Page 65.
That's okay. So we currently use National Business Solutions to provide services here at the port for IT, that is server maintenance, purchase desktop equipment, laptops, et cetera, et cetera. I give the background on the report. In line with our 5-year review of vendors, we issued an RFP for a managed services provider. We had ended up with 5 responses. Aaron, myself, and Paula scored those responses and determined that HIAC would be the best provider of services for us moving forward. If it does move forward, we would post an intent to award, notify the vendors before awarding a contract. One of the things this vendor suggested is actually not buying a new server, but actually moving everything to the cloud. They're also knowledgeable on some of our networks as they provided cameras for us in the past. They're also located down in Florence, which is a reasonable distance. Take any questions.
This is Gil. So, so Mark, when is it optimal for a company of a certain size to bring inside the IT expertise? And I assume that when I look at these costs, I assume that's not rational for an organization as small as we are, because I don't think we could do it as cheap as they could, given our costs.
No.
But at some point, it does make sense. I was just curious about that, whether you gave that any thought at all.
Yeah, I've given thought to that. It is all about how much infrastructure support you need. And we actually don't need that much at this point. If we move to Office 365, everything's going to be in the cloud, literally. So it's even less support. Again, it's the amount of computers, the amount of support you need. I don't know that there's a magical number. But it's something we will continue to evaluate as if we continue to grow.
Well, if I may add to that, the way I look at it, Gil, is it's like, do we have anybody in the office that is an expertise if something goes down, if there's an issue with our IT? And I don't know that I can say we do. I think that's when you start looking into, do we need to hire someone to provide that service? Because if something happens, something goes down, there are a few things we may be able to do it ourselves, but a good part of it we probably wouldn't. And that it's when you look for outside help.
And to hire someone to do this would be 70, 80 plus thousand a year. It's at this point, it's
Right.
It's not justifiable.
And they provide their response times. Oh, sorry, but they did provide the expected response times within certain, that look pretty standard and reasonable.
That is correct. Yes.
How did these guys fit in as far as their pricing compared to the others?
They were all similarly priced. I would say they're a middle of the road, if I recall correctly. They're not the lowest, and they're not by far not the highest. I would say they're right in the middle.
When we did the scoring for the RFP, we included pricing as well, actually the highest number.
40% of the score.
So we did add that as, so we have multiple qualifications and as well as pricing and so on and so forth. And that accounted for part of the choice.
And,
thank you. I was curious.
And when we put this RFP out, we actually contacted all regional suppliers, everyone in the Newport area up to Lincoln City, to let them know this was coming out so they'd have an opportunity to respond as well.
Great. If there's no further questions, I would look for a motion.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion to authorize the general manager or designee to post an intent to award, and the general manager or designee to sign a contract for managed services with HIAC not to exceed a one-time fee of $14,485 and recurring monthly costs of $4,981.
Do we have a second?
So Walter, I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Next item, B, administrative building, page 103.
Okay, that would be me. And today I have here as our guest, Dustin Capri and Dietmar Goebel. And as I already made comments in my staff report, this is a project that has been on the works for over 8 years when the original port building was demolished. Apparently safety issues was the reason. And the port was transferred to the current office where we are today as a temporary building for, that was supposed to be a temporary for 2 years with 1 year extension. And that has continued to be extended since. I believe at the time the port had about 6 employees working out of that office. Today we have 8. We don't have space for anybody else if we hire someone, or which we're not looking at this point, but we did look into getting an intern at one point, which would have been for free, and we didn't have a space for that intern. We only have 1 restroom. As you know, the situation during COVID, it's been impossible to keep self-distancing. And right now, the interest rates are the best it can be. And we thought, you know, we put this on the budget, and you approve the budget. We understand that the cost may be way less than what originally put on the budget. We approach Dietmar Goebel, who has apparently done the previous design in 2014, but it wasn't moved further. I'm not sure the details of the reasons, but it was not moved forward at that time. I understand there is a desire to constantly put money into other infrastructure, something that is more usable by the community and that creates funds. However, at one point, the port will have to build a building, an administration building. Right now, the commission meetings, besides Zoom, of course, it's been going over to the South Beach, a small room over there. Although at this point we haven't had many people attending our meetings, you know, it certainly doesn't give much space for that if we need to in the future. A new commission room would also provide for a new space for community use. We also looking into putting, I believe it's a little over 800 square feet for rentable space in that building. It will have a separation from rentable to public space in the office space. And I sent out the design so far that Dietmar and Dustin have put together. They're here if you have any particular questions about the building. But what we're looking for today is to approve the next step so we can try to figure it out, you know, or get documents ready for an RFP and figure out what the actual estimate will be for the building. And then we can later on, when we're ready to put out an RFP, we certainly will be happy to give you a better understanding of our finances at that time. It may be a couple months from now. And we'll look into, you know, where we are, because I know there are concerns about COVID and how that may affect things at this point. I did not share this with everyone, but I'll be happy to, but I did ask Mark to put together a ratio of where we are financially, because we obviously got to look at that, especially when we put into an asset that it's not gonna make us money, but it's still an asset. And he looked through several ports, similar ports around the coast, as well as Columbia County, I believe. And at this point in time, we actually have the best ratio besides Columbia County, as far as, you know, expenses and revenues. And the only reason we're not first is because we have the NOAA debt, but then again, even that is backed up by buy bonds. So when you put it all together, we actually in pretty good shape to be able to go and get a loan to build this building. I just don't want to lose this opportunity because again, this is the one time that the interest rate is the lowest. And I think this is a good opportunity. But with that said, before I ask you to approve this, I believe we have a public comment. So if Karen, can you read that public comment?
I don't have the public comment. Do you?
Okay, I thought you had, okay, I do have it. So let me, you didn't receive it. I thought you sent a copy of it, but I do have it. So I'll read it to you here in a moment. Okay, so this was from Pat Redman. And his comment is, the commission addressed the issue when Mr. Greenwood wanted to build a new port office. Number one, you have millions of dollars in infrastructure repairs, and a new port office doesn't create new jobs or make new revenue. If you want to spend that kind of money, hire a marketing person to market cargo for the terminals. That is what the bond measure was sold to us for. A cargo berth and a barge fisherman's dock. Anyway, as I believe I mentioned before that, of course, we always gonna have projects and things to repair. And the actual marketing plan for the terminal it's in our budget. And the only reason I didn't start the year with that is because right now there's COVID still going around. And I've been talking to other ports that have cargo, and things are not still that pretty on the cargo side. So it's just not necessarily the best time yet. Hopefully things would change here, but we do have a budget to look into working something that we can start marketing the terminal again. That's my comment on that. So if any of you have any questions.
Questions from the commissioners?
You want some background on that, Jim?
Sure, I'd love some. Thank you.
Okay, so 2014, and can I ask Dietmar and Justin a quick question?
Yep. What's up?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the drawing with the orange and the yellow on it. Is that what's going to be added on to the original design?
Yeah, so it's been modified quite a bit, Walter. So let me start off by saying how happy we are to be working with the port again. Back in 2014, I think the only person that's still around now is you, Walter. And we worked, originally we competed for a RFP against a couple of different firms. I know Glass Architecture was one, and then there was a couple other that had competed for the RFP. We were awarded it in 2014, and we got about 20, Walter, you probably remember, we got about 25% into what our contract was when we got a call from Rick Fuller and Kevin that said, okay, it's time to put that on pause. So when we were contacted just last month by Paula, we've been working with Paula, Mark, and Aaron on kind of this revised concept. It's interesting to see how the port's vision has changed, how the port's needs have changed, most importantly. And the plan set that you're looking at now, Walter, is obviously very conceptual based on what we're able to put together based on the most recent information. But it's gotten larger, as Paula alluded to, because you guys have more needs and more potential needs for the future. I think one thing that Paula, Aaron, and Mark are all thinking very carefully about is that you don't want to build a building and then right after you move into it have a new issue or a new demand where it doesn't actually meet what your requirements are. So that's a very long answer to your short question, but yes, it's been added on to.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, Walter, so the difference between colors is more to do with rentable, private, and office. As Dustin indicated, when you look back when this was put together, we barely even fit the people that we currently at staff. We had absolutely zero space for growth. Not even for a visitor if we had a consultant working out of our office, or say when the auditors are there, we need an office place for them to spread out the papers and look through things. We didn't have that. That design didn't have any of that at all. So what we've done is we expanded a bit to the amount of actual staff we have. Plus, we added one additional office for possible future growth and 4 cubicles, which we didn't have at all last time. So again, if we have interns or as we grow or you know, whatever needs, it doesn't add that much to have additional cubes. And I think we will regret it if we make it just to cover what we have currently.
Oh, okay, thanks. Just forgive me. I didn't go back 6 years into my emails to find out the original plans. And thanks for the update, Justin. Yeah, it looks kind of the same as it did, but you know, on background, you know, Dustin, I sat in a couple meetings with you going over the plans, and we were originally going to spend some of the unrestricted NOAA funds, and we were going to basically pay for this building outright. And what happened was we got a lot of pushback from the fishing community, especially right there in the commercial marina, basically saying kind of what Pat is saying. So you have a lot of infrastructure, and why are you spending that money on building yourself a new office building now when you have all these projects? So the source of the concern comes from a different area, but it's still the same. We're looking at a loan now, and my only question, Paula, was where are we thinking about locating this?
The location would still be the same as the last design. I think even though it would be in the tsunami zone, it would be very difficult to put this building. Well, first of all, in order to be outside of the tsunami zone, we would have to purchase property. And so we thought if we just do it exactly at the location that was originally intended, which I think it's a good location, which is right across from the current building. So basically, as you drive on the Port Dock 7, the driveway, you would go left instead of right.
Oh, okay, thanks, Paula. Just for some more background, and I'm sorry to take up all this time, Jim.
No,
One of the main concerns and one of the issues that we were going to have to deal with that we had just started hearing from was the public meetings and worried about blocking people's view. There are a lot more people on that hill, and the property values went up quite a bit on those houses from when we were first considering this. For that, I would just put it out there that we should consider South Beach. We would have less issues with blocking people's sight, and if time is of the essence, we might want to look at a different site because of that.
We can certainly consider it. I just feel sometimes that South Beach, we're already kind of short in space for a lot of the things that we're trying to accomplish out there until we get rid of the NOAA pile there, which I think it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, as we're still going to have to maintain the NOAA dock area. We're probably going to dredge every so often. It is something that if we could get rid of that, then I wouldn't be so much concerned about space at South Beach. But otherwise, hey, for me, it would be closer to home. But
If I can add to that too, Paula, one thing, and Walter, I don't know if you remember this, but one thing we had talked about originally with the neighbors, we had a public hearing and the neighbors came down, and what we had sort of, the terms in which we had gone into moving forward with the design, we had talked about putting up a story pole, and that was one of the advantageous parts of keeping the building close to Bay Boulevard. Is the closer it gets, actually, the less of a distraction it is for the views for those neighbors up above. So one thing we had talked about is putting up a story pole, or actually putting up, like someone had an idea of putting up a balloon, you know, to try to really show people how tall it's going to be. I think once we really look at the building, it's a one-story building. It's a relatively, I mean, it's a slope roof, but not overly steep. So I think that's something, I'm not opposed to South Beach either, but I think there's ways that we can engage the neighbors and be really collaborative about the way we move forward, even with COVID-19. You know, we can all stand up and make it work, I think.
No, I remember those discussions, and like I said, my only concern was the newer people that have been in town since 6 years ago. That's all, Justin. But thanks.
And just know that, you know, if you do have any comments like that, by any means, bring them up to me, and I will discuss or even layout of the building. I'm happy to discuss. At this point in time, we look at the old design. We try to stay pretty close to what we had, but just make it more usable for today's age. And we work with Dustin and Detmar on that. But and I would imagine that the old building had a lot of input from the commissioners already. So, but there were different people, you know. So I would imagine if you may have some comments, and by any means, we would be more than willing to listen.
Walter, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just, where's the customs guy gonna go?
Well, here's the thing with customs. I had this conversation with Dustin Detmar, and apparently if we were to negotiate anything with them today, they would have all these crazy requirements from the federal government, in which would really increase the cost of the building. We thought that, you know, right now they're in a trailer, so we have that space that is the rentable space. We figure that we can offer that space to them once the building is ready. Yeah, and I don't want to offer now and have all these requirements, because if they require us to do all these things, that is going to increase the building by, I don't know, a couple $100,000 just because all these little things they want us to do. It may not be worth it, you know. But I would assume that they may be interested once the building is there. Yeah. If not, then we're going to have to find somebody else to rent it.
I remember those requirements, and they've probably only gotten more.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is Gil. So, and I think I mentioned this, we were having our pre-budget meetings, or to start discussing this, that there actually was an effort back in the late 1990s to do a building. And that was a 2-story building in a similar location as this one. And it was, the financial model was based on having a core set of anchor tenants. So about 60% of the building was not occupied by the port, it was occupied by tenants. And the idea was that revenue would help support significantly the costs of the building. Now there's risk associated with that, of course, and the size of the building. Obviously, it sounds like the size has become a much bigger issue since then, particularly height-wise. But that was that model, and I guess, which leads me back to thinking about the financial side of this. in terms of, what the ultimate annual bill will be between the loan and the maintenance relative to the cost today. And maybe that's in the budget or that has been already analyzed, but I'm curious. And particularly with trying to get some space that you're renting to help defray at least some of those costs. So I just would like to hear about that briefly, Paula.
Right. So right now we're still trying to figure it out. We just finished putting together, the changes on this particular design. And this is the phase where we're going to look into we estimate the cost of the building will be for the size that we're looking and all the details that we got into it. Parts of doing that would also be doing our own, now that we would know the size of the building. We could get an idea, for an instance, of what the SDCs will be. We're going to be able to transfer some from the old building, and then we have to evaluate what that cost will be. And then moving forward, there are a few things we've done. The building's going to be very well lit with skylights, so there'll be daylight. So hopefully we'll save some electricity on that. But of course, it will be a larger building, but we can shut down parts of the building that we're not using. And that's the idea of having those, areas that we talked about it. That when the commission room, for instance, is not using, hopefully we'll be able to shut that down. So with that said, we're going to have to try to get a cost of how much it will be to run the building. And we should be able to then give you a better estimate when we come back to ask you to move forward with the project. At this point, I don't know that we're that far yet. With the estimate for it. At this point, all we're asking is to move forward with the next phase of the design and getting all this estimate put together.
The direct answer is we did put a budget line in there based on $4.2 million and a loan, which would more than cover it.
Well, yeah, that amount that we put in there was to build, the whole thing and including furniture and everything. But at this point in time, we're looking probably maybe 1.2 for the building and no more than 1.5 altogether in terms of having the building ready to move forward. But then there is the expense that goes on an annual basis to maintain the building, and that will be separate.
Gil, if I can offer any input on that as well. So before COVID-19, commercial real estate in Newport was going, for older buildings, was going around 89 cents a square foot, somewhere right in there. Mm-hmm. If you were to build a brand new building and lease it out, maybe you're pushing up to $1.25 a square foot. I think that's really like the high end. And so the problem before COVID was that the construction costs were so high, in which, these self-funded projects are really advantageous in theory, as long as you have the commercial rents to actually support them. And so I think that was an existing condition in the 90s and honestly before that as well. And I think as we've moved into, the last 5-10 years, I think it started to really evaporate, where there's too much commercial real estate available. And then with the COVID-19 situation and so many people working from home, I guess, that's not my opinion, probably not even my privy, but I would be cautious about trying to use commercial real estate to help finance the project, because I think it's going to be a really challenge to lease those spaces going forward.
Yeah, no, good point, Dustin. I think the model, and certainly the markets have changed. The model then, though, was core tenants. So the idea was you were negotiating with community interests who needed space and would potentially be there for 10, 20 years, long-term rents. They were discussing, for example, with extension at the time. Before they moved into the county building, that was actually part of the core discussion for an anchor, long-term anchor tenant. That's what I'm talking about, is the fundamental concept there.
And I did talk to ODFW, which has shown some interest in the past, but right now they just don't have the funds, and it doesn't seem to be something that they're planning on it. And like Dustin said, I'm a little bit more concerned nowadays of, you know, who out there would lease a space from the port. I don't think we have that many options out there, quite frankly. And at this point, we still have about, well, it's close to a fourth of the building. It will be rentable, and which could be divided into two spaces if needed, I guess. And also the commission room, it's a choice that the commission could make. You could either just have it as used by nonprofit and government and for the community use in general, or we could make that also a rentable space when it's not in use by the commission, just like we do with South Beach. You know, it is something that could still be available for not a full-time basis, but, you know, as needed basis.
If I could add something on to Dustin's comments. As far as construction environment right now, it's very appealing to go to do something, because the construction environment is fairly down because of COVID. If you're going to ever do anything, now's a good time, especially in about 6 months. I think you're going to see a bigger lag in the construction lag, and contractors are going to be a little bit more hungry to move forward or to put in a good bid. So it might be a good time to do something if you're ever going to do anything with the building at this particular time.
Thank you, Dimar.
Yeah, that was me, Dimar.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Well, I think it's a good thing to move forward with. There's lots of future questions to come, and I really think it'll greatly increase efficiency, privacy, which is very important in the workplace for sensitive matters, and health and safety, which it's hard having that office that you have now with one bathroom and close quarters, especially in these times. So at this time, I guess we can entertain a motion.
Jim, can I say something?
Oh yes, sure.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to talk about the economic side of it, and the way I kind of look at it. I've got mixed feelings in general. I know this isn't like the final decision,
Right.
but just kind of where I'm coming from, my thought on in general about looking at administration building. I kind of look at it when you're looking at a vessel. A lot of these vessels in town have been revamped over the years, and there's always a question about at what point do you rebuild the wheelhouse and redo the galley and the rooms, and those are the things that don't make you money on a boat. Everything else you have to revamp, rebuild to fish and to make money, but the wheelhouse and the galley doesn't fish, and so you have to decide at what point do you need to do that, and different fishermen sometimes have different takes on that, and so I do see the need. You got that little cramped quarters, and you do want to have a place the staff can work, and have an efficient organization. So I see the upside. The negative side is money and debt, and that's sort of what I try to keep an eye on, is the debt that the port has. And so I do see it as a good step in going through this phase 2 and looking at taking a look to where we can get an estimate. And so I support that. I'm still cautious moving forward. I still want to see numbers I still want to hear from other commissioners as we go forward and anybody else who has input about the project. And also, I had talked to Paula earlier because I told her I was going to bring up tonight that I would like, before we eventually, if we go forward, to kind of look at where we are with different projects and sort of critical infrastructure that we see as immediate needs at the port, so we can kind of get a sense of where we think we're going here, not only the rest of this budget year, but maybe even the next year or two with whether we're looking at rogue seawall or electrical issues that are going to be needed dealt with at the docks, both South Beach and Commercial. And so I'd like to kind of take a look at the state of the port as part of a decision-making process, because debt is a very serious thing. But I do agree with both Dietmar and what Paula and I believe Mark have said about the timing may be good when you're looking at interest rates, when you're looking at project and contractor availability and so forth. There may actually be a timing window that is a good one here. And so even though I have reservations, I do see the positives of the project itself and the timing. And I look forward as we go to the next phase and beyond to kind of look at everything else going on with the port and see how this fits in. And I'd like to hear from other commissioners and the staff as we go forward, how they see everything fitting in and everybody's comfort level with it. But I do see the need, and I do appreciate Paula bringing this forward as something that is a need and does serve a purpose. And I've talked enough, so I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jeff. Kelly?
So I'm kind of with Jeff on you're running a boat and you have to figure out your projects. But I think this is a good step in the right direction. This is one of those first steps that you need to take. And I think it's important to move forward with this step. And I know when we're running a boat and deciding what part, whether it's the wheelhouse or lengthening or whatever, sometimes we move slowly and a little bit at a time and take these steps a little bit at a time, and then we pull the trigger. Other times we just pull the trigger and do it all. And so I do think this is an important step to take and to move forward, because we need to be moving forward on this project and then evaluate it as we're moving forward. So I do know that it's important to continue to grow and to improve and to better the board and the community. And so I do think this is an important step, and getting a motion for this would be good. And so anyway, so there's different ways to run things, and this is take a step at a time and work through the process, and hopefully we get to that final finish line. So
Thank you, Kelly.
This is Gil. Just one last comment. I also support this phase. I would say that this will be an issue that will require a high level of public relations on to demonstrate to the community that this is actually a smart decision. It's not a waste of money, but it'll make the port more successful and efficient over the long term, and that the construction's being done and designs being done in a way to be efficient, both with input resources and utility costs and revenues. So I would just recommend that we be very diligent in working with the public and doing the high level public relations necessary to make sure that we have the community supporting this effort.
Thank you, Gil. I couldn't agree more on that front.
That's
Jeff?
an excellent point.
Okay, any further discussion from the commission? Okay, motion? You're on mute, Jeff.
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going back and forth between screens here, the Zoom and the, so I, in addition to the 6,500 already approved by the general manager, I recommend a motion to authorize the general manager to contract with Capri Architecture and DH Global Architecture and move forward with the proposal as presented, not to exceed an additional $13,000.
Have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I
Likewise.
We like seeing your work. Thank you.
look forward to working on the building with you again. Yeah.
Okay, staff reports, general manager.
Okay. So, well, as you may imagine, there's been a lot of talks of COVID still. You know, we're still trying to constantly listen to the guidelines from the governor. I've been meeting with them still on a weekly basis, sometimes bi-weekly. A lot of conversations with other ports too, to see how everybody's doing, what the issues are. A lot of actually meetings with the Maritime Administration as well. Lately, they've been having recurring meetings, and now they're started. Today, I participated on a seminar. Well, it was a meeting that talked about grants and all that. So, and funds availability for, you know, all the COVID issues. Reality is we haven't needed as much as other ports. When you talk to other ports, people are losing, you know, thousands and thousands, close to millions of dollars, even smaller ports, because of the type of business they have. We've been very fortunate because the diversity of business that we have here at the port. As you can see, our losses has been minimal, and even then we've been getting some of those reimbursed back. And the biggest problem for us was mostly the RV park and the marina, especially the RV park. It was during that time frame where we couldn't open up for folks that were staying less than 30 days. And since then, it's just booming, you know, because as you may have heard, the RV business is going crazy everywhere because people can't travel by plane or outside of the country. So they are buying RVs. And I even heard some business were going up 200% in sales because, you know, people are just going crazy after. So I don't know how maybe Mark can bring me up to date, but the last time I spoke to him, we're sold out all throughout. How are we doing now, Mark?
The RV park is sold out again this weekend.
Still, yeah.
Yep, and marina is completely sold out. And during the weekdays, there are not many spots left either. So we're starting out with a bang.
Yeah, so things are doing quite well on that. Of course, you know, we're not gonna just count on being completely out of the woods because we just don't know. We have been collecting better, you know, as far as people that weren't paying us before, even on the commercial side. And I do have some concerns still because we don't know how that's gonna affect folks on the commercial business. On the long run, you know, that we may have some issues. I hope not. That means people are doing well. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But as far as on our end, we have been super busy. You know, the terminal is busy, the commercial folks are busy. We are doing a lot of services. And things are calming down a little bit on the recreational side as well. as far as, now that we have security constantly looking up at the tables, the fillet tables, there was a little bit of, people were just not used to the new COVID. So now that people are accustomed to, I think things are getting a little bit better. So we'll continue to look at that, continue talking to the state, make sure we're following some of the guidelines, and any recommendations we hear out there, we'll continue to follow. We're just ready to apply again for the SDO grant for security. We added some cameras. They have this on an annual basis now, so we may add more cameras this time and perhaps other things next year. I have engaged with a consultant we have put aside on the budget monies for consultant to help us with grants. And I hired someone under my threshold and this person has been working with Lincoln County as well. So she is pretty familiar with the whole COVID thing and the public sector. So we're going through all the items that was in our budget that we could find grants for and other funding sources. So we'll be meeting the end of this week to go over. I guess the biggest one right now it's the Dock 5 Pier project. As I mentioned on my report, we're hoping to have a project manager selected and maybe even do a special meeting for approval. Well, unfortunately, even though we had 5 people, Aaron, that came to the meetings, we didn't get a bid from anyone. Apparently, people just didn't have enough folks in their business to cover this project. But we are in talks with them and EDA to see if we can soften up the requirements and see if we can still bring someone on board. We're also in talks with someone out in the Portland area that may be interested and apply. That means we may have to bump the timeline a bit. There's still possibility of getting the project done for this year. However, what we don't want to do is push to a point where people are going to start charging us a lot of money just because they think they can do so. If worst comes to worst, we do have the EDA funds for next year. We still have our permits for next year. We would put out the RFP again for the project manager and the contractor for next year and get everything on board, but not have the project happen until next year. We prefer not to for security purpose. If we do so, we're just going to have to figure out how we're going to maintain the pier safe. At this point, I know Aaron is ready to go and get this project done. So is there anything else you have to add on that, Aaron, about this project?
I think the main thing is that it's a function of time. Like Paula said, I've talked to all the firms that expressed interest in the project. 2 of them submitted a written decline to bid, and the rest of them just didn't respond. So I've talked to all of them except for one. I got a call with them tomorrow, and the main problem is that we're looking to get started right away, and they don't have the selection criteria was weighted more heavily toward those who have in-water construction experience. So if their firm doesn't have that sitting, ready to go right now, which, it's an extra added qualification that we're looking for, or more experience that we're looking for. So it's not like in-water construction is it's a little bit more specific of a qualification. So there's fewer of them around, and so they book their work a little bit further in advance usually. And we're now at the point where it's kind of difficult to find somebody who has that experience and is just sitting around right now without without a project waiting for them. So they've each expressed that they are still very much interested in trying to get the work. It's just that they couldn't commit to it right now. One firm did talk about. I did get a few questions during a bid meeting or during the job walk meeting about the requirements that the EDA has us put that we had to put into the RFP. That some of them are really specific and they seem to be more geared toward general contractors. But it's the EDA's rules. So if you have a contract that's above a certain dollar threshold for services, they want you to have certain things in place. And they were a little bit concerned about the specificity of these things. And I think that I can still work with the EDA a little bit to try and get the wording improved so that project management firms will be more responsive to what we need. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest challenge we're faced with right now is the very short timeline that we're on for this in-water work period. And I don't think it's going to change any when it comes to general contractors. I think it's going to get even more difficult. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Before you turn it off, Aaron, now that I have your attention, can you also give a quick feedback on the status of the stormwater over at South Beach?
Sure, that's it's going pretty well. We the pipe that we removed, the pipe that was causing the problem wasn't really so much a pipe anymore. We've got it piled up and waiting for disposal right now, but there was no bottom in it, and the top had caved quite a bit. So that's all been removed. We've repaired. There's a section to the south of the manhole that was right nearby in the road that we had to excavate in addition to what we originally thought we were, where we originally focused. We completed, but then we found just south of the manhole there was a section of pipe that also had no bottom in it. And once we got everything cleaned out well enough to get the scope inside of it, you could see that the top had sort of collapsed enough that we were not going to be able to pull the sleeve through it because it had been flattened enough. So they went ahead and excavated that. Took them about a day. That was part of the original. That was one of the reasons why we selected that contractor, was they had kind of planned for this contingency, and so it was part of the original submission and approval to have that work done. And we didn't need to use all of it. So that section of pipe has been replaced and been backfilled already. And we're just about ready to finish it up. So it's going pretty well.
One of the things that we are talking about is create a better maintenance, preventive maintenance process, because this type of emergency, and I know sometimes it's hard because that costs money too, so it was harder to do it in the past, but looking forward, I think we really need to every so often, scope, for instance, some of the areas, and we just may have to put in a rotating way where, we spend some money and doing some scoping in this area and that area this year, and then move on to the next year to do other areas. That way you're not caught by surprise by this type of emergency projects, right? So we're going to be looking into that in order to prevent this type of issues happening in the future, hopefully. And that's pretty much what I have for the time being. So if you have any questions, as you can tell by the numbers, like I said, from Mark, things are starting to look up. I think we are in pretty good shape overall.
Thank you, Paula. Any follow-up questions for Paula? Gil?
One quick question. So Paula, you had mentioned what's happening to the fleet, what kind of year they may be having. One expects their revenues will probably on average be down, and which could put some pressure, next year in terms of paying the leases. Any sense about that yet? I mean, is there any way to are we going to get ahead of that? We have the system of fish tickets that actually give us an early look at what those revenues can look like. And I don't know if we have, in terms of where prices are at, what fishermen are bringing to the dock.
Right.
So it's just a thought. So again, you're not surprised if by the end of the year fishing revenues are down 30%.
Absolutely. Well, the way I look at it is, first of all, is the amount of service we're providing, and that hasn't necessarily gone down as far as I know. I did talk to a couple people in the business, and you know, it doesn't seem, I mean, obviously some people got affected, and there were some stimulus out there for the fishing community, and as a matter of how much people apply for or not, and that, you know, help some folks. It is to be expected that some people will have a harder time, some more than others, some people more prepared, some people are not. So we don't expect everything to be roses, you know, but at this point, I got, quite frankly, no indication that is really, something is really coming down. If anything, is the opposite, because as far as Mark tells me, people are paying. You know, even people that were behind, they started paying, except for a couple that are having issues, but those folks were having issues way before COVID. We'll keep looking up, being prepared, and not, you know, counting on something we don't have a hand yet. Let's put it this way. Yeah. Go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to say, when it comes to the fishing industry, we have 4 boats out there fishing, and income is down, and there has been a decrease in price and a lack of, you know, time on the ocean and different stuff, but we're still making money, and so we're still moving forward. And so I don't see anything drastic coming down the pipe for us on our end. I know things are, you know, we put a few projects aside ourselves because we didn't want to jump into them, things that we had set up for the boats, but we've just kind of slowed down some of our processes and kind of prepared, but we're still bringing in revenue. And I know that a lot of the fishing boats are bringing in revenue. So I don't see anything in danger, you know, there's no real danger spots. I know even with the water, a lot of the boats were dispersed out of town, and they were moved to different ports to fish, but they were still fishing. So I think we're in still a good place, even with the water issues, even with COVID-19. I got to believe that there's been the different PPP loans that have came out on behalf of the fishermen, whether it's for their crewmen or for, you know, the salary and the rents and all of that stuff. So there's been a lot of intervention there too. And so I don't see any danger signs on the fishing industry side. If somebody ain't paying, it's probably because their priorities aren't quite right. So I think that there's nothing to fear at this point. So.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, I appreciate the information on the potential hiccups with the Port Dock 5 project this year. And we certainly, I think everybody involved would love to see it happen this year. But understand there may be some headwinds that could push it into next. And I'll be real curious to keep updated on that and the efforts to modify requirements and see what interest there still could be for this year. But I certainly understand that. I appreciate all the information explaining the details of it. And sounds like with everything else that has taken place with this project and EDA grant up to this date, that there's a lot of complexity in it and the requirements. And thanks for the information and Aaron and Paul and all your all staff effort on that.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner reports or final comments, anyone? Walter?
Oops.
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
That's all right. So I did have a quick question. I was looking at And I don't know if this is the right time to do it or not, but, and maybe I should have just called Paula, but anyway, in the Association of Pacific Port News, it talked about a grant that they had a special, where did it go? Let me find it. So inland rivers, ports and terminals, the U.S. House of Representatives passed Coastal and Inland Ports and Terminals Commerce Improvement Act. Anyway, it's for grants, and I don't know if you're looking into that or if that applies to us or.
Yeah, I received that email. The problem is a lot of those projects that applies to it. It's if it's for big projects and terminals, it wouldn't really apply very much for like our docks, other than, it's usually involved with cargo. And depending what, we are looking at all possible grants that is available for us, including the one for the marketing of the terminal. And we, as a matter of fact, I did talk today with Murad. I mean, I didn't talk, I listened mostly. It was all about grants and loans and funding in general. And a lot of times they're the ones managing a lot of those funds. As a matter of fact, the Association of Pacific Ports was involved, and the AAPP, the American Association Ports Authority, was also involved with that. So yeah, we pay close attention. But if you ever hear of anything that you want to ask us if we're following up, by any means, because who knows, maybe something that got missed. And but I get a flood of emails on a regular basis from a lot of the associations and not only them, but even sometimes from our own legislators, because they hear, especially if there's some funds coming from their end going towards, one of their federal agency, they tend to notify us and say, hey, just so you know, there's this fund going on. So we're pretty well notified now. Not only that, but we also, the Business Oregon just created another committee. They call their federal committee. So basically, Business Oregon was always the one who paid for the federal lobbyist in DC, and to keep up, with what's going on there and help ports in general. And they've been in pretty good contact with the coastal ports. And what happened is, I believe that agreement is coming to an end soon. So there was this committee put together to see, is there still a need for that? And absolutely. So now, instead of just, going straight to that person, we're talking to this committee and the needs, what type of things we're going to focus on and what is necessary for the ports. And if we have anything that is particular to a port, we can also go to them. And so it's a good committee. I think we're going to have a meeting now once a month, and all of those opportunities definitely will come to our desk, so we can pay attention to it. So we'll keep paying attention to it, but thanks for bringing it up.
Thanks. Well, thanks for all the information on that. So it's nice to kind of learn on how everything's going here. So appreciate your guys' patience. So thank you.
That's great.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, no, we're all learning. So this relates to that. So Paula, is there the targeted money that's cyclical, annually or biennially, that is targeted to small to mid-sized ports that you typically look to, that comes out of the federal government, or as you say, is the big chunks of dollars mostly for the big cargo ports like LA or Seattle or something?
Yeah, no, there is every year, basically, and that's part of what we do with PNWA and also with this federal government relations, which is this person that works with Business Oregon that I just mentioned. And that's part of what they do. They're out there to look up for small ports. and some of our legislators here in Oregon are very, very heavy-handed on that as well. They make sure that the small ports are not forgotten. So every year they put a certain amount of money that is going towards ports, and they always make sure that there is a small amount that is target for, and so there are different forms of those monies come up, but every year during that includes the Army Corps, it includes the water bill, which is this funds that usually bigger ports pay for when they get maritime traffic. They have to pay a certain amount that is put aside to be used towards the maritime industry, and it's usually mostly used for smaller ports than they are, or at least the ports that need it. And a good part of those funds have been put towards small ports. So at that, it's a matter of like the projects you have, what can you use that money for? Often those money that's used towards dredging and some infrastructure that will help the maritime sector. Unfortunately, there's always this thing about, fishing is not considered cargo, and it's something we're trying to change, and how we can, help bring some infrastructure money for us here, and try to show that, hey, what we have here matters. That was part of what we did when Walter and I were in Washington, D.C., in meeting with some of the agencies there, showing that, hey, even though we don't have this big amount of cargo, we do have one of the largest amount of seafood that passes through, this part of the world. So
can we get our congressional delegation to change the definition of cargo? I'm only half joking. Actually.
That's been discussed many times. Walter, do you have any comment on that? I'm sure you heard that before and dealt with that in the past.
It would take an act of Congress, but yes, it is possible.
Yes, it is possible.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, act of Congress.
Yeah.
I nominate you, Gil. You go for it.
I don't have enough money to lobby for that. They need deeper pockets than mine. But I would raise it. Yeah, next time we talk to Schrader, right? Let's talk to him about it. One of his roundtables.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got to keep bringing it up, and not let them forget what we have here in this area. It's very important for them to continue to hear from us. But I gotta say, I mean, we got. Merkley is very in tune with ports and small ports, and so is Schrader. Trying to bring Wyden on board a bit more, and but likewise, he will listen, and I know folks that work with him, and they do a good job for us in DC as well. So we'll keep on trying to make sure they know that what we do here matters for the community.
Okay, sounds great. Any other comments? I see Kelly has her mic off and Walter has his mic off. Anything to add?
No, hey, Jim, the only thing I would add to that would be be careful what you wish for.
Okay.
And I did have one comment on the sport marina. You brought it up, Paula. We had a pretty busy weekend on 4th of July, and the only concerns that I heard, I wasn't down here, I was up in Depot Bay, but the amount of people who are filleting for money now there in South Beach is they're taking more than half of the tables for the people who are not using their services, and it could become an issue. That's all.
And we are looking into, at least we start talking, but I have to, and that will be part of maybe working with this person that is working for grants for us, but looking into possible funds to get more tables because especially we don't know how long this is gonna last. I mean, I'm sure it probably won't be for this summer, but it would be a good idea to add at least 1 or 2 more tables if we can.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, I see your mic's off.
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks to everybody at the port for making this a successful year so far. Every business has had difficulties operating during COVID across the board, and there's extra stresses and extra hoops you got to jump through to do the same business you were doing without it. And just thanks. Good job. I think everybody's been, we didn't know what to expect this year at the port or in the fishing business or at the recreational marina, anywhere. And it's just been, it's been quite a chore getting through it for everybody. But just good job and thanks.
Well, I appreciate that. And let me tell you, we have good staff. We have good people out there that even during hard times, everybody was out there working. Even though they were in contact with a lot of people, they were afraid of catching the coronavirus, but they were there. They were there working and trying to keep things afloat, and doing the services. And, and it's been quite great working with Mark and Aaron and getting things going. Karen keeps us on track, and, everybody really does a good job. And I'm very happy, after my first year here, I'm very happy with the staff that we have now. And really it's a teamwork. And quite frankly, I'm pretty happy with my commissioners too.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. It's good to see the port doing well when, so many businesses are not doing well right now. And it's good to see that we're stable. Anything else? We have a calendar for future considerations, not much on there. Normally there would be this time of year.
Everything has been canceled.
Yes, 2020 has been canceled. And there's no public comment. If there's nothing else, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to an end at 7:29 p.m.